experience in the aquaculture sector. And Morena has started his training and experience from the University of Stellenbosch. And at Stellenbosch, he studied aquaculture production management, and he attended aquaculture international trainings in a number of international countries such as China. He's been to China, he's been to Malawi, he's been to Indonesia, and he has participated in a number of trade missions in Norway and in Denmark. So we're talking about someone who's actually quite clued up and has experienced a global experience. Morena has a multi-award winner. He won a 2019 Young Farmer of the Year in the Fisheries category, which was hosted by the Department of Fisheries, Forestry and Fisheries. He is also a member of the African Farmers Association of South Africa, AFASA in short, and he's also an executive member of Tilapia Aquaculture Association in the country. So without further ado, because we have a very tight schedule today, and we would actually like to have the presenters present first, and then we will have a Q&A session where we will engage with the presenters on the subject matter. And we would try, time permitting, to not only speak on fisheries in isolation to aquaculture, because both sectors are sort of interlinked. We would play by time. Hopefully we will find a way of integrating both the sectors, aquaculture and fisheries, for the benefit of entrepreneurs, new entrants in the sector. So Morena, I will hand over to you as our first presenter, and then I will after you've presented, I will actually introduce the second speaker. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Before he presents, I just, my name is Morena Khashane. I just requested that can we record, please? See, I didn't have a response from you guys.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that, but we are recording the sessions. We do record the sessions. We do also avail the presentations at the end. We will provide a link on our Facebook page if you are interested in the presentations as well, but we do record the sessions.
So who will get them?
Sorry?
So we are going to have access to them?
Yes, we will share the link for the presentations.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. And you're most welcome to drop your Q&A during the presentation on the chat box. We will respond to that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Before I start with the presentation, I would like us to play a small video of aquaculture in South Africa.
My name is Siphokazi Ndudane. I've been working at Abergold for the last year and 2 months now, and I find so much joy, and the joy that I get from it is it's working with the people and being able to know that we're one of the biggest employer in places like Gansbaai and Hermanus.
Sorry, Morena, you didn't share the screen.
Back into the communities,
okay.
And seeing them grow, seeing younger people coming up. My name is Siphokazi Ndudane. I've been working at Abergold for the last year and 2 months now, and I find so much joy, and the joy that I get from it is it's working with the people and being able to know that we're one of the biggest employer in places like Gansbaai and Hermanus, we're putting so much back into the communities and seeing them grow, seeing younger people coming out of university now, because we've got so many students at the moment that's interns, and knowing that there is really people that's looking forward to get into the aquaculture industry and taking this forward.
I'm Chris Wilkinson. I'm the manager here at HIK Buffalo's. It's a new farm. We have 32 employees currently. By the end of the year, we'll have 42. And within the next year, we'll have close on to 90 employees. Currently, we've got 19 tons of abalone on the farm. But like I said, you must remember it's a young farm. It's only been less than a year that we've had abalone on the farm. But the EIA of the area has been done for 130 tons. And if the next EIA goes through, we would like to have 500 tons.
My name is Ruben Saul. I'm the chairman of the Doornbaai Development Trust. Initiative that we started in 2007. About 5 years after that, we successfully formed the Doornbaai Abalone Company. So the Doornbaai Development Trust is the first community in South Africa obtaining a 35% shareholding in a commercial abalone farms. But the community of Doornbaai, for the first time, going to have a benefit in a business that, the benefits will come back to the community in many different ways, with education, with sports, with religion, with social transformation, and economic development in particular.
My name is Nico Prince. I'm the farm manager for Blue Ocean Mussels. It's a company that was amalgamated from two previous companies, La Vie Seafoods, which was a processing facility, and Blue Bay Aquaculture, which is the mussel farm itself here in Saldanha. Currently, we're sitting at a production capacity of 700 tons mussels per annum, and we're going to increase that to about 2,000 to 2,200 tons per annum.
There was a lot of people skeptic about Phakisa when it started. There was a lot of people with the wrong understanding, thinking that you're going to get millions of rand for free just to do whatever you like. Apart from all the benefits that came out of Phakisa, I think Phakisa structured the whole thing a little bit. It was not a lot of loose ends anymore. Job creation is an important thing. It's not only the numbers being created, but the potential for taking people up the ladder, so to speak, because of the long-term livelihood of a project like this.
My name is Morena Khashane. I'm the manager of the Malapong trout farm here in Saldanha. The project's been going from November last year, and we basically got 2 cages in. It's still on pilot phase, so we're doing research only now. But things are going very well, so we are progressing to do a basic assessment and to go further with the project.
My name is Dave Kretzer. I'm the project manager of the Hamburg Aquaculture project at Hamburg in the Eastern Cape. It's a pilot plant so that we can show potential investors that it can be done.
I'm Richard Clark. I'm the Managing Director of Wild Coast Abalone. We currently produce 160 tons of abalone a year. We've got 220 employees currently working. And yes, we farm abalone, we grow it and export it.
Thank you again. The topic of today is fisheries and aquaculture socio-economic growth in South Africa. I will only deal with or maybe discuss with you three aspects. One, the overview of aquaculture in South Africa. Two, socio-economic growth factors. And lastly, I will touch base on the conclusion, what needs to be done to address socio-economic growth in South Africa. Globally, aquaculture has contributed significantly to important of socio-economic priorities. Aquaculture, also known as fish farming, is a rearing and cultivation of fish, mollusk, seaweed, and other aquatic species. In 2013, South African government has identified aquaculture as a priority sector for development of the ocean's economy. However, sector only contributes 0.8% of South African fish production, which amounts to 0.7 billion rands, just about 0.2% of South Africa's gross domestic product. The sector is still young and developing in the country. Aquaculture in South Africa is divided into two main categories. One, freshwater aquaculture, as well as the marine water aquaculture. Freshwater aquaculture consists of species like a rainbow trout, koi, carp, Nile tilapia, catfish, as well as Tilapia mozambicus. While marine aquaculture consists of the abalone, oyster, seaweed, carp, yellowtail, and rock lobsters. Mainly of the aquaculture activities do happen in the Western Cape, as well as the Eastern Cape. While the freshwater aquaculture in South Africa is mainly small, it is mainly driven by the trout subsector. The aquaculture socio-economic growth factors includes among others, supply and demand, to trade, food security, and employment, as well as rural development. Supply and demand. The demand of fish and related products are quite high, are mainly driven by the export markets, mainly the abalone, oyster, and the mussels. Locally, demand is also high, and the country generally absorb much as it can be supplied. Trade plays a vital role in addressing socio-economic growth. The main products that are exported from South Africa, they include the abalone to China and some trout over to Europe and UK. Based on my knowledge, I believe that the export mainly from abalone and trout over and other species as well might be affected because of the COVID, and the abalone export to China as well in the medium and long term might be also affected negatively, mainly by the US and China trade wars. The main imports from other countries to South Africa, amongst others, will include cheap tilapia from China and Indonesia, as well from Zimbabwe. These cheap imports, they hamper the growth in South Africa, because when this cheap tilapia imports lands here in South Africa, it lands around 15 Rand per kilo. And the production cost for a farmer to produce a kilo of tilapia here in South Africa, it costs about between 25 Rand and 28 Rand per kilo. It is very difficult for our South African producers to compete with the cheap imports. That will affect the socio and economic growth of tilapia in South Africa. Food security. The UN high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition concluded that fish is crucial to any debate and action to reduce poverty and improve food security and nutrition. This is due to fish being recognized for its nutritional benefits above other animal sources of foods. Fisheries and aquaculture, therefore, has a critical role to play in achieving the SDGs within the context of global change. To this end, aquaculture already provides 50% of the fish food that is consumed globally. And it is estimated that it should contribute 62% of food fish by the year of 2030. For example, a decade ago, aquaculture only contributed around 10% of the fish food, and the 90% came from the fisheries or the capture fisheries. And this shows that aquaculture, it is the fastest growing sector. And indeed, aquaculture can contribute or is contributing to socio-economic factors in terms of food security. However, the fish consumption per capita in South Africa is quite low, or is still low. Currently, the fish consumption per capita is around 6.9 or just under 7 kilogram per capita, compared to other countries like in Africa. The fish consumption per capita is around 15 kilogram. Aquaculture is playing a role in job creation. Currently, the sector has created around 6,500 direct and indirect jobs. Mainly the employment comes from the Western Cape. It constitutes about 76%, followed by the Eastern Cape with about 16%, and KZN 5%. In terms of the gender in job creation or in the employment within the sector, 61% is male and 39% is female. Thirdly, in terms of a race, 71% is Black Africans, 20% is colored, and 9% is white. However, mainly white people, they hold senior positions in the sector. And I believe, the sector needs to be transformed so that we can have Black people in the senior management. The biggest challenge, again, in terms of the employment in the sector is lack of skills. Aquaculture is highly specialized skills, and there is no enough pool of skills in South Africa. And there are tertiary institutions in South Africa that offers aquaculture qualification. However, those qualifications in those institutions,
there we go.
They are not from.
That's fine. Leave it.
Aquaculture is not the main or major degree. Lots also needs to be done there. Aquaculture in the rural areas is very limited due to many factors: political willingness, lack of infrastructure, access to funding, access to water, access to land. However, recently, Minister of Agriculture has issued land, or there's been land available. But from my knowledge, I don't think there is a specific land or the specific land that has been allocated for aquaculture development in South Africa. Lastly, in closing, to address or to realize aquaculture socio-economic growth in South Africa, we need one thing. We only need one thing. We need enabling environment. Government must plug in. Government must push the button. Otherwise, we won't see the socio and economic growth in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Morena.
Thank you, Morena.
Thank you for that informative presentation. Colleagues, once again, can I ask everyone to switch off their videos and also mute themselves? It's kind of disturbing, especially during the presentation. It's a plea to kindly please switch off your video and mute yourselves. Thank you, Morena, for that insightful presentation. It's very much welcomed, and I think everyone who is in this session is eager to ask questions and engage with you on the areas that you've touched on, and especially the last part that, in order for South Africa to realize the socio-economic of aquaculture, we need to have an enabling environment. And I'm sure the burning question will be how, because I guess it does not only take the government, but it also needs all hands on deck. I will just go to our next presenter now. Before we ask questions, if you have a burning questions, you are welcome to post it on the chat box. We will allow our next presenter to present, and then we will engage on the Q&A session. Our next presenter for today is Ms. Siphokazi Ndudane. She will be doing a presentation on fisheries. Siphokazi is a graduate with extensive knowledge and experience in fisheries. She holds a BSc degree and an honors degree from the University of Fort Hare, which is here in the Eastern Cape. She further on achieved her master's degree in fisheries management sciences from the University of Bergen in Norway. Since November 2019, Siphokazi has been the Deputy Director General of Fisheries Management from the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries. She has held prestigious positions in the regional space in fisheries. She's been a commissioner for South Africa in 4 RFMOs, which is the Regional Fisheries Management Organizations. She has been a commissioner of ICAT, in short, which is the Commission of the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas. She's been a commissioner in the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission and also in the conservation of the southern bluefin tuna, including the Southwest Indian Ocean Fisheries Commission, which is called SAST. Siphokazi, before joining government, she has worked for Stellenbosch University at the business school, and she's been with the National Research Foundation. And currently, she is the founder and the director of Fisheries, TCQ Fisheries Consulting Company. So Siphokazi, I will ask you to please take us through your presentation in fisheries, socio-economic growth in South Africa. Thank you. Can I ask Muleto to please switch off his video? Thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Thank you very much, Ndumi, for affording me this opportunity, and good morning to everybody who is joining us on this session. I'm really thankful for the opportunity to be sharing about the fisheries, the role of fisheries in socio-economic development in South Africa. I've decided to focus much more on the Eastern Cape, just to look at the Eastern Cape. Who is helping me with the presentation?
It's coming up now. There it is.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Unati. Sincerely appreciate. I couldn't figure out how to do it for myself, so I'll really rely on you to assist me as we move along. So I think one of the things that I just want to say immediately, I anticipated Morena's presentation. Thank you very much, Morena, for your very informative presentation. There's always an interchange in terminology and issues when you talk fisheries and aquaculture. They go hand in hand. So I've really tried to steer much more deeper into the fisheries aspect of it. So I'm just going to, the slide, I'm going to just give a quick glance on the Eastern Cape in particular, and the opportunities thereof and the needed interventions, picking on what Morena has, last statement has been on the interventions and the role of government in providing that enabling environment. The next slide, Unati, I'm talking on, and I'm gonna look a little bit on the possible risks and how we could look at mitigating those measures. Can you go to the slide? Again here, I just want to say to you, next slide please, Unati. Is Unati there?
Yes, we're
Am
on
I
the
frozen?
I think so, because we're on
Okay,
the
wonderful, wonderful. Okay, it was not showing from my side, but it's showing now. So, forget about what Morena is telling you about aquaculture for a moment. You have to put up infrastructure, you've got to feed the fish, you've got to make sure the fish is alive, it doesn't catch diseases and everything. You have to make sure the water is correct and everything. Forget that, just for a bit of a moment. I'm not discouraging aquaculture, because as I've said, these are intertwined, but I just want you to shift your mind a little bit away from aquaculture. There's fish in the ocean. The Eastern Cape has a coastline of almost 800 kilometers. You don't need to feed that fish that is in that ocean. You don't need to look after that fish. All you need is the equipment to get in the ocean and get that fish, of course, in a legal manner, because the access is regulated and monitored. But what I'm trying to say here, there's an ocean coastline in the Eastern Cape, massive coastline. You have a province that is significantly rural. It's a rural province. even the few metros that you see in the province, they are not that developed to a level. Of course, some towns are better than others. But if you look at the volume and the percentage of the population in the Eastern Cape that reside along the rural areas, and next to where they reside is an ocean. Unfortunately, the only thing in the Eastern Cape that gets shown about this, you know, is the women carrying some, whether it's wood on their heads. It's more kind of for tourists to see. There's these serene areas, so prestige, untouched oceans somewhere in the rural areas. Then you see a little bit of your recreational fishers. Then you see flooding, a flood of tourists that come into these rural oceans in the province for touristic purposes. But there is nothing that is about the fisheries itself. And we have to ask ourselves questions, why is that so? So these rural communities are especially, I'm talking here in terms of the development, that you've got these oceans, you've got these estuaries, you've got these rivers, you've got these dams, and they are mainly underdeveloped. And there's a historical legacy into this thing. Because if you are to compare the west coast of our country and the eastern side, forget the myth. There are myths that are always spoken about. Yeah, the east side of the country doesn't have much fish. You've got abundance of the fish on the west side of the country due to upwelling and the Benguela current being a large marine ecosystem. Forget that. That is fallacy. I am telling you right now. You've got Mozambique on the east side, just above KZN. Mozambique is a booming country that has a proper fisheries. They've got fish markets. They are really a fishing nation. Over above that, you've got Tanzania and the other areas, Kenya. These are booming fishery countries. But when you come, especially on the portion of the Eastern Cape, there is this whole gap in terms of the fisheries activities in the country. This is political, and it is safeguarded by certain NGOs like the WWF, for instance, because they want to drive this notion that you must preserve this part of the country for sustainability. I am not against sustainability. I'm a fisheries scientist by training first, but you do not preserve without utilizing, but you utilize in a manner that can preserve the resources for the future. So there is a growth potential for this sector in the Eastern Cape to supply the fish, to create the needed jobs, and to contribute to the income of the country. One of the things that is quite critical on the last point on that slide is the role of the illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries. In the Eastern Cape in particular, you've got fleets that are illegally operating. I'm not talking about South African fleets. I am talking about foreign fleets that come. I have visited areas like Bizana around the Wild Coast. They tell me all the time, there are big vessels here at night that are fishing in our waters. You go around the areas of Coffee Bay, Port St. John's, the residents there are telling that we see volumes and volumes of these trawlers coming, fishing in our waters. So the notion that there is no fish in the east side of our coast is fallacy of fallacy. Without a proper research done and surveys done, and unfortunately, the government currently, the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, they are conducting research surveys on the west coast of the country. And they go to the east coast until just after Port Elizabeth. And sometimes they get into East London, but it ends there. There are no research surveys in the province that start from East London and until the border with KZN. There are none, zilch. Now, we are told that there is no fish there. I mean, come on, that's fallacy. Let's move to the next slide. So the fisheries landscape in the country currently, this information is provided in the FAO fisheries reports. In 2016, we had almost over 612,000 tons of marine fish that were landed in South Africa. My screen is still, okay, yes, my screen is showing 900 tons this 612 from water and inland waters. Now remember what I've said in the previous slide. The Eastern Cape has oceans, has got rivers, has got estuaries, has got dams. Only 900 tons of the total catches in South Africa comes from freshwater and inland fisheries. This means, therefore, that we are underutilizing or we are under-realizing the potential that our rivers, dams, and estuaries have in the role of this. Of course, estuaries are a little bit sensitive because sometimes they become breeding grounds for the fish that needs to return to the ocean, but we will talk about that. It is estimated that around 28,000 jobs are created in the primary sector of fishing, which is the direct fishing where you do the extraction of the fish. Almost 80,000 jobs are estimated in the down and upstream of fisheries at your processing level, marketing and related stuff. Approximately 12 billion, which equates to about 0.4% contribution to the GDP of South Africa. This is the last estimate that the FAO has reported in 2016. This sector remains untransformed. And I think untransformed because fisheries in South Africa is transformed in paper and in reports. But in actual sense, the sector is untransformed. So you've got a prevalence of fronting in the fishing industry. So you'll find a company reporting 45% black-owned, 50% black-owned, 60% black-owned. But if you start to look and zoom into who really, and I'm glad that Morena indicated the same with aquaculture as well. He's saying almost 75% people involved in aquaculture are black people, but about 9% only is the white people that are in the management sector or running these farms and everything. So, so the sector is so much untransformed, and there's a real need to transform the fisheries sector in South Africa. The next slide looks at the global demand for fish products. Morena touched on this. I'm not going to dwell much on it, but the projection is that the global fish demand is going to grow by 48% until 2030. 48%. That's going to be the global demand for fish products and fish products. Now, I think what I want to zoom into here is the opportunities that exist still, because in South Africa, the fishery industry is about extraction and sending away export markets of the raw materials. But you have very little of the processing that is happening, value addition, the greater use of the product. Seaweed, for instance. Seaweed is now becoming to get much more used as agency for various processed foods, for pharmaceutical products like toothpaste and chocolate, even ice cream for that matter. And I want to tell you that of the 23 concession areas for seaweed extraction in South Africa, almost 17 of them are in the Eastern Cape and they are unutilized. And that 17 was reserved to be given to the small scale fishing communities. I'll get back to that a little bit when I talk about the opportunities. The other issue is around blue fishing, for instance. There's a growing need now and a growing trend of how do you take one fish in the water while you eat the fish? What do you do with the skin of the fish? Now there are people who are making the skin of the fish, turning it into leather. It makes shoes, it makes bags. What do you do with the skins of the fish? I mean, the scales of the fish. Some people are using the scales of the fish now for glazing, ornaments. What do you do with the intestines of the fish? Some people are taking the intestines of the fish, turning them into liquid fertilizer that is used for agricultural produce and everything. The bones of the fish, what do you do with the bones? So there's a lot of value addition that is being looked at. Countries like the Maldives, for instance, are at the forefront of this. In Maldives, not a single thing that is called waste of a fish in Maldives. There are factories that are in rural villages. Those rural villages look better than Port Elizabeth, by the way. If you are to go to Maldives in a rural village and you are in Port Elizabeth, you will think the rural village in Maldives is a metro, and you will think Port Elizabeth, Nelson Mandela Bay is a village. The economy of rural villages, on how it is being boosted by the fisheries products and the value addition that is happening within this. There is an opportunity into this. The next slide looks at the Eastern Cape in particular. You will see there is, on the 4 coastal provinces that the government has been embarking on realizing the small-scale fisheries policy. 132 of these fishing communities are in the Eastern Cape. So you see there, just look at the Eastern Cape, all those dots you see there. Those are 132 coastal communities in the Eastern Cape. So what are the SMMEs going to do about these opportunities that reside in these villages? What is the opportunities there? Let's get into that in the next slide. In the next slide, you look at the socio-economic profile of these communities. Household supply of electricity, piped water, and everything. If you look at that, you will see that these communities have rather very little access to water, very little access to electricity. Food security is very poor, in particular in the Western Cape and in the Northern Cape provinces. But still, if you look at the Eastern Cape, food security bar there, you've got a red bar where people, they go 1 day per week without having a food. Then you've got the blue bar there where people skip meals. They have skipped meals in the past month when this study was done. So what we did here, we did this study while I was still at the department, because we wanted to measure the impact that small-scale fisheries policy is to have when it is implemented. So we said, let's look at the baseline of where exactly these communities are now. What is the status in these communities, so that we can be able to measure the impact, the interventions this fishery policy is going to have in this. If you go to the next slide, which is what I want to draw your attention to. If you look at the economic activities that are happening, in particular, major respondents in each and every of these provinces are mainly dependent on fishing for more than 50% of their income, meaning there is already activities that are happening in the fisheries space. But if you look where this fish goes, how they fish this fish, they don't have proper equipment to fish this fish. They don't have facilities where they can process this fish. They don't have access to ice to be able to chill their fish, because fish has everything to do with quality. If the quality of the fish is not good, from how you catch it, how you chill it, and how you preserve it, it is going to affect the quality of the fish. And if the quality is not good, your income or the price of the fish is equally not going to be good. But here lies an opportunity here. These people, large of them, 20 to 45%, they are dependent on government grants, but limited involvement they have in other forms of activity. But there's already activity in the fish. So there is a potential and an opportunity to grow the fisheries contribution of the activity in its own, because if you are able to use better equipment to extract, let's take the people around these communities that are fishing for lobster, for instance, they dive to catch this lobster. But if they are to use nets, either hook nets or traps, they are going to increase the efficiency of them catching this fish, increase the volume, better the quality, and better the price. We go to the next slide quickly. This is my second last slide. Interventions. We need to look at the production and agro-processing. Commercial species. Around Port Elizabeth, for instance, we know Port Elizabeth is a squid home. But what does the extraction of the volume of the squid that comes from Port Elizabeth does for the economy of the Eastern Cape? Zilch. almost 99% of that squid gets out of the country, it leaves the country. Take inshore trawl, for instance, around Mossel Bay and everything. You've got companies that are based in the Western Cape coming and do the extraction of these resources in the Eastern Cape. They bring the product back to Cape Town to process it in Cape Town, market it in Cape Town, it gets in the next aircraft, it leaves the country, it is out, they fetch revenue out of it, foreign revenue. I am not saying there is anything wrong about fetching the foreign revenue out of it, but I am saying there is a huge gap of value addition, which is going to translate in creating jobs, in particular in the areas where these resources are coming from. The East Coast rock lobster, for instance, the oysters, and the tuna fishery. You've got an opportunity in the coast of Eastern Cape, participating in the tuna fishery. There's very little participation on that. We see now there's a growing trend of people eating sushi, sashimi, even among the Black population. I mean, many Blacks now get into a restaurant, they want to eat sushi, sashimi, something that has never been that popular before. That is using tuna most of the time, most of this. So you are having these opportunities. There are these trends that are growing in terms of what you can do with the fish. As I've indicated, the small-scale fisheries, you've got 132 communities. They are already having access that is granted by the legislation. And I can tell you now, government does not know how. I'm from there. I was the DDG of Fisheries. Government can do as far as policy. Beyond the policy, government can, it's difficult for government to implement anything. And I think many of you who are connected here can attest to that. Government is good in making policies, but government is so bad in implementing policies. Even the latest Oceans Economy Plan of the Eastern Cape that was recently launched at the beginning of this year. It's beautiful on paper, but if you look at that, there is only one line that talks about fish. It's like fish was an afterthought when the report was almost concluded, and it was just added as a one-liner. But if you are looking at the potential that this is, it needs to be, it's a gold mine, really. It's a white gold that needs to be untapped. I won't talk about aquaculture because Morena has talked about that. Then you need to move from identifying the products and what value addition can be done with those products to enterprise development. We need serious enterprise development support for the fisheries sector in South Africa, in particular in the Eastern Cape. In particular, rural support programs, bulk infrastructure, electricity. And you need to think electricity that is not going to be much more causing a burden on your overheads. Solar, bio, wind. You need to look at the roads, because as much as I'm talking about these coastal communities, I mean, look, the roads leading to these communities, to these villages is awful. I'm just talking just about Coffee Bay alone. The road leading to Coffee Bay is so tiny, it has serious potholes. Well, it is tarred, but once you get beyond Coffee Bay, when you are going to connect to further up, there's not even tarred roads and everything. So there's a real need of the infrastructure. Is this infrastructure going to come from entrepreneurs and SMMEs? Hell no, because that will be too much money. This is where government needs to play a role. How does government play a role? I think institutions or platforms like the Eastern Cape Maritime Business Council are that voice that needs to agitate, are that voice that needs to load government into this thing. One of the reasons why today fisheries in South Africa is occupied by the very few companies that you see. Hell, I'm telling you, Sea Harvest agitates, Iron Jace agitates, Oceana, which is that whole brand of Lucky Star, and they agitate. They make sure that they either agitate or they capture or they lobby, whatever term you want to call it, but they make sure their voice is known. Currently, we are facing the process of rights allocation. Who is writing articles on Business Day and everywhere else? Is the CEO of Sea Harvest. Where are the SMMEs? They are quiet. And everything that the people in South Africa read about, oh my goodness, you must not touch the big business. You must not take quota from the big business because they are creating jobs. Let me tell you, the real sustainable jobs are created by SMMEs, and they will be created in those small communities, because the impact of that job at an SMME is far much more reaching than a job that is created at a big commercial level. Commercial guys have interests. They're gonna protect their interests. They've got shareholders. They want to buy yachts. They want to buy islands in the Indian Ocean. At SMME, you're talking people who want to send children to school. At a rural area, you're talking about people who want to feed their children. The impact of the jobs created at the small scale and at SMME is far-reaching in impact than the jobs created elsewhere. Quickly, let's go. Issue of processing plants, as I say, I've indicated that you need strong partnerships and collaborations, and these are not going to come on their own. You need investors to come into this place. You need to open the markets, both local and international. And I want to emphasize on the local market, because South Africa's reliance of fish is the outside, as Morena has also indicated. Even the farmed fish gets shipped outside. COVID has shown us that when those markets collapse, we sit with the fish that can't go anywhere, and you sit with South Africans who can't eat fish. If I were to do a quick question to the people that have connected on this same seminar that we are in today, and ask you, when was the last time you ate fish? I think many of you are going to struggle to answer this question. If I'm asking you, what is in the fridge of your homes right now? Is there a fish product in your fridges? Maybe there may be fish finger, there may be a fish cake here and there, but the reality is that South Africans don't eat fish. Now, we need development agencies like the International Pole and Line Foundation, who are so much geared in assisting SMMEs and countries that want to look at growing this. Skills and education, I won't talk much about that. Morena has talked about it. It equally applies on the fisheries sector. Let's move. My last slide, possible risks and mitigation. There's a real big issue about the depleting of fish stocks in the ocean. Equally, while there is depleting fish stock, it is false to pretend that if we don't manage those stocks in a right way, those fish stocks are not going to recoup. That's what fisheries management is about. If we start managing our fish stocks in the ocean, we will be able to have a sustainable and a longer period of fishing them. So that's why I'm saying we need to focus on research surveys. Research surveys are going to be driven in the provinces I've indicated. We have never had a research survey in the Eastern Cape. Now, if we can have a research survey, the government is not going to do it. DEF is not going to do it, because DEF is already having a market of people they are sustaining. But it is my thinking that Eastern Cape Maritime Business Chamber must agitate the government of Eastern Cape to stop squandering money and channel it into the pockets of cadres and everybody. The money must go into commissioning a research survey in the province. Have a research survey, do a bottom trawl survey in the waters of the Eastern Cape. I am telling you, what will come out will shock people to see the volume of the fish that we are having. We have a challenge in the risk around Brexit. It is causing a lot of uncertainty. We don't know what the income and the impact is going to be, because Britain is part of EU, and a lot of our fish products are going to the EU markets. Now, I'm saying we've got the Africa free trade agreements that has just recently been signed. We need to maximize and capitalize on that. Let me tell you right now, horse mackerel. Let's talk about horse mackerel, for instance, which is called in the Eastern Cape Maspanga. As I speak to you now, in Zambia, in Malawi, in the DRC, in Ghana, in Cote d'Ivoire, they want volumes close to 200 metric ton per month that they want of horse mackerel. Literally, the market is looking for the fish, and the African market is looking for the fish. Forget this thing that Africans don't eat fish. It's South Africans that don't eat fish. Mozambicans eat fish. Kenyans eat fish. Tanzanians eat fish. Ghanaians eat fish. And everywhere else in the continent, people live and eat fish. And there's a high demand. We've got an opportunity. We've got a free trade agreement that can be utilized. World Trade, last one. World Trade Organization negotiations that are currently happening around fisheries subsidies. There is a call to stop the distant water fishing nations to come and fish in the waters of developing nations. This is going to drive a huge demand and gap. So all the vessels you see from Japan, from Russia and everywhere that go to developing nations' waters and fish, whether they are stealing or they fish under agreements, the WTO wants to put an end to that. So who is going to fish in these waters when these vessels are not fishing? There lies an opportunity. We need an integrated and coordinated approach. And as I say, especially with the COVID-19 and the challenges that brings in. And I think this platform of the Eastern Cape MPC can play a role in ensuring that this happens. Can you zoom the last slide, Unati? It's my last slide. I have finished. I want to talk about the picture on the top left, where there is a lot of boats. That is not a town. That is a fishing village. That is a fishing village. The tiniest village top up in Spain. It's a village. It's sustaining its own economy from fisheries. You've got vessels that are built in the village. Nets are built and repaired in the village. Bait is prepared and done in the village. That's a village, it's not a town. It's possible, it can be done. We need coordination, we need collaboration, and we need to be able to do this. I sincerely thank you.
Thank you so very much, Siphokazi. I see that the chat room is buzzing with people who are interested in the presentation itself. But I think it must go beyond us wanting to have a copy of this presentation, but rather to engage on these issues. We need an integrated and a collaborated effort, as Siphokazi rightfully indicated. So I will allow this time for us to engage. Questions are most welcome. We are now 8 minutes past 11. We have about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A session. You are most welcome to ask your questions, both presenters, both to Morena and Siphokazi. Morena touched on aquaculture to those who joined in late, because I could see that other participants joined in late. We already talked about aquaculture issues, and Siphokazi was talking about fisheries. And there is a lot of overlapping issues, which I'm hopeful that we'll be able to juggle between the two and find and come out of this session, because my chairperson always say, we are hoping that these sessions will not only be talk shops and we become excited about what has been discussed, but we rather take whatever information we get from here, deliberate on them, and find solutions, especially to the challenges. The nice thing is that even opportunities are highlighted in these presentations that we can even take them further and begin to implement them. So I will give time for questions, colleagues.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Facilitator. Thank you, Sis Domi. I am noting the hands that we have here. We've got a hand from Humza Mfenyane and then Timothy Jacobs. Those are the only hands that we have. Maybe we'll take those two hands and then we'll go to the chat and the Facebook. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sonti. I think we'll take those hands in that particular order. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Good morning. Can I speak? Hello.
Yes, you can speak, sir.
No, I just want to say thank you to Morena and Siphokazi. I know them both. Siphokazi, while she was DDG at Fisheries, and Morena, who I've met earlier this year on a trip, looking for opportunities in aquaculture outside South Africa. I just want to highlight a few things. I think the biggest challenge that we have in South Africa is there is too much political interference when it comes to the rollout of empowerment, fishing empowerment programs for small-scale fishers as well as historical disadvantage SMMEs in the industry. And there's also a lack of political will, even though the policy is good. Secondly, on the lack of infrastructure in our communities, I think there is a lack of land, there is proper problems with roads, but you know, we've got lots of government buildings standing empty all over South Africa, which do have water and all those facilities, but it's just standing there and it's not being utilized. We need to do a proper audit on facilities of government buildings that's not being utilized and turn them into facilities for small-scale fishers, those in aquaculture, in SMMEs, in fisheries. Then the other thing that needs to be looked in is especially the value chain in both aquaculture and fisheries. There needs to be a proper study on the value chain because it's no use you give rights, aquaculture rights or fishing rights to people of color, but then you come across in the value chain that people of color are not featuring in the value chain, whether it's the supply of PPE or whether supply of packaging material, whatever needs to be supplied to the rights holder or to the fish farmer. We don't feature really in the value chain of fisheries and aquaculture. Then the last picture that Siphokazi presented on Spain, that is something good. I think we need to look at how we can build also small harbors along the coast for fishing communities that lives along the coast in the Eastern Cape. A very important thing that you also mentioned is when it comes to the Eastern Cape, this thing about fishing vessels from not South Africa catching in our waters, it's been happening for years. It's been happening for years. Somehow we need more patrol vessels to patrol our fishing borders, because what these guys do or what these companies do, they at night or whenever there's no patrols happening, they will come into our economic exclusive zone and they will come and fish our fish. I mean, they will come and harvest our fish in the waters in the Eastern Cape. I mean, that thing is a reality. We need to stop that. Otherwise, they will just keep on depleting our marine resources. And then on research, yeah, there lacks commitment from national government when it comes to research. By the way, I'm not from the Eastern Cape. I'm from the Western Cape. But I know the challenges that we have in the Eastern Cape. Historically, it's been like the Western Cape is like the fishing capital of South Africa. We need to move away from that thing. It's not true. It was historical design to be like that.
Okay, Mr. Yes. Can you please wrap up? We also have other...
okay, and the last thing that we need to look at... Yeah, the last thing that I wanted to say on the research, I think the Eastern Cape government also need to come up with a research agency or something, or work with people like Siphokazi and them in the private sector to look at how we can do proper research on the fish species available in the Eastern Cape. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. And our next participant question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got two questions. One is for Mr. Morena, and then the other one is for Ms. Ndudane. For Mr. Morena, I wanted to ask that as someone that is working in the sector, And I really just want his honest opinion here. We have a lot of aquaculture projects that have worked very well around South Africa, especially as Mr. Jacob says in the Western Cape. But equally, we've got a lot of projects that have not worked. And they are littered all over the country. What's his opinion on the failures? What does he think goes wrong with the projects that do not work, especially projects that are within what we call our communities? I think those, we've got a lot of them that have not worked very well. And then for Ms. Ndudane, my question is around the issue of value chain analysis. If you look at the agricultural sector in the Department of DAF, they used to have what's called value chain analysis reports. I actually have not seen one for fisheries in a while, and none for aquaculture. Now, my problem with that is if one wants to look at investment into this sector, especially in the South African markets, what would they base it on? What data is available that an investor would actually engage with? Because I think if we rely on government and government effort, we're going to be waiting until the cows come home. I think if one wants to go and look for investment, we're going to have to look for people that are looking for information that speaks at a commercial element. And I'm not sure if that information exists. If it does, who are the people who have that information? So what kind of market shares are we looking at? What kind of production volumes? What kind of regulatory environments do we have? You know, as they do with all of the other sectors that you know people want to go into. If for instance you wanted to go into the beef market, you would understand that there's information in real time for that. But I'm not sure if in the fisheries sector there is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And our last participant for the questions before our presenters respond. Thank you. Unati, I thought there was a third person. Is there no other questions? If not, can we ask the presenters to kindly respond? I know most of Mr. Jacob's inputs were valuable comments. Can the speakers kindly respond to both participants? Morena, would you want to start? And then Siphokazi.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mfenyane, for the question about the failure. Based on my knowledge, and I was very lucky, you know, to be appointed to try to assist many failed projects, across the country. And from those projects that I've seen or I've been involved with, the biggest challenge was the jockey. Our government, they are funding the people who are not ready yet. You know, as I've said earlier, that aquaculture is a very specialized skills or sector. We need right sets of skills and experience to be able to have a very successful venture. So the biggest issue is the jockey. The other aspects that I've seen mainly in Free State and Northwest is the procurement. Government buys or rather procure the wrong technology or the technology that was never tested for aquaculture. In that way, that's why we have seen many failures in government-funded projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Morena. I will not allow a debate on that aspect. For the sake of time, I will ask Siphokazi to also respond.
Thank you very much, Ndumi, and thank you so much for the interactions. Absolutely, I fully agree with the comments that were made by Timothy. He's, spot on. And I think what is lacking is the political coordination, not just the will, but the coordination. To give credit, or maybe not to bash the government so much, the reality is that the fisheries and aquaculture space is unknown in South Africa. It's unknown to an ordinary South African first, then it is unknown to government. This is also the reason why, even when you get to the provincial governments, let's take Eastern Cape, for instance. Who can tell me in the provincial government of Eastern Cape, where does fisheries and aquaculture lie? I don't know if there's somebody who can tell me that. Because you've got a Department of Rural Development and Agrarian Reform. You've got the Department of Economic and Tourism. I forgot now, but it's called DDG. Now, so in the province, but at a national department, you've got a National Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries. Even when it was Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, fish disappears in the configuration of government the moment you get at a provincial level. So each province decides where to place fish if ever they even get to a discussion about fish. So one of the problems. The issue about the value chain analysis, I don't know who was asking this question, but you are spot on. The short answer for you, there is no information that exists about fisheries. There is a huge information gap. In fact, this is what was part of why I was pulling my hair when I was in government. I had a deep discussion with the NAMC, which is the National Agricultural Marketing Council. They produce value chain analysis reports almost on a quarterly basis. It's about wool, it's about maize, it's about table grapes, it's about everything, nothing about fish. Even BFAP, I had a discussion with BFAP and the Pretoria University as well, because they too, when it comes to fish, they rely only on the information they extract from SARS data, where SARS, for instance, will record the amount of exported fish and the volumes of that and the revenue that was collected. Even Stats SA, if you look at Stats SA's reporting, once they come to the fisheries part, the information gets very thin. So there exists a gap in the information. So how do we take it forward if an investor wants to invest? What we have been doing so far is to do directed market value analysis, directed ones. For instance, in the space of aquaculture, for instance, you would commission a dedicated study to look at all of that. So that's how we are doing it at this point in time, because there is scarcity of data and there is data spread out. ECPCEB, for instance, the perishable thing, they do keep some form of data, but it is still not comprehensive. To even agree, to even show you that there is information gap. Last year, 2019, in April, I hosted a fisheries indaba at Lord Charles in Cape Town, which was a launching of the rights allocation process. I invited the commissioner of the competition commission, Bonagele, Temgosi Bonagele was there. I invited some bankers and some various funding agencies there that were talking on investments in the fisheries. Everybody in the house agreed, including the fishing industry itself, that there exists information gap. Even the jobs we are talking about in the fisheries, we're talking about a report that was done in 2016 by FAO, taking the data from various places and everything. We're not certain how many jobs are created in the fisheries space. We're not certain about the GDP contribution of fisheries into the GDP of South Africa. This is also the reason why the largest fishing association, SAST, South African Deep Sea Trawl Association, they commissioned their own study. They commissioned Genesis to do a study for them in terms of that value addition, the number of jobs that are created. So they kind of did a socio-economic study into that. And I've been encouraging other associations to do the same because, of course, each association will want to trump their own narrative. But there's a real problem of information scarcity or non-existent information, and that is thinly spread everywhere that may not even make sense and answer the questions that we want answered. Thank you, Ndumi.
Thank you, Siphokazi, and thank you to Morena. And I hope the questions or areas of enlightenment that were asked, people are quite satisfied. I'm not sure if there's any other question. I have noted the charts as well. We definitely going to take note of all the inputs that people have indicated on. But for the interest of time, we only left with 4 minutes for this session. And I think there is a great need for us to even discuss this issue, even, to our next session, we will see as time permits. But I will hand over to our chairperson, Mr. Unathi Sonti, for his concluding remarks. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. It's very much appreciated, and I think we have a lot on our hands. So we really need all hands on deck on this one. Yes, we may have drivers in the process, but people need to make sure that we make, a change in the fishing industry and aquaculture in South Africa, and in particular in the Eastern Cape. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Sonti.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Dumi, and thank you to our speakers. Yes, Ms. Dumi, I don't know if we wanted, with your permission, to allow Mr. Khashane Cindy. I think we missed their hand that they had raised. I'm not sure if we can allow them just for 1 minute.
Okay, I did call out for the third question, but he did not respond. Is he still online?
I'm right here, I'm listening.
Yeah, okay, so yes, we'll give you at least a minute of your
maybe
question.
10 seconds, just maybe 10 seconds.
All right, thank you.
Just to follow up on the two previous speakers, Siphokazi and Morena. I just want to find out, when you're in regards to the information that is gathered, that this information, is it gathered information that is hidden, number one, or is just information that is just not researched? Meaning that you might find that the sector has information, but it's only available for the privileged few and those that have access to it. So meaning that you pay for that information instead of this information being freely available for everybody in the sectors. It's one of those things that could be a driving factor in terms of people not having access to these markets, because information is either hidden, or like Ashilu Sisipo, governments don't take these things seriously. They use other people's information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Siphokazi, can you wrap up? I think you did highlight on the information gap issue.
Thank you so much, Ndumi. I will quickly do that. Thank you, Khashane. Yes, 30 seconds. It is both. It is both hidden and it is non-existent. In fact, the non-existent part also comes as a result of the sector being obscured. It's an obscured sector. I will make a clear example. I do not know of any fisheries economist in South Africa. If you know one, please tell me, because I've been looking for a fisheries economist. I have never heard of any. Well, there are people who are fisheries scientists at Rhodes University. Peter Brits has got some people who look a bit on the economics, but I've never heard somebody who talks on fisheries as an economist in the country. So my quick answer to you, it is both hidden and non-existent.
Okay, thank you, Siphokazi. Unati, concluding remarks? Unati? Mr. Unati Sonti, you have few seconds to wrap up.
It's like Unati is not online.
Okay. Let me take, in the absence of Unati because of time. Sorry?
Can I just ask a quick one?
Okay.
Any support or assistance that is offered to aquaculture cooperatives?
Aquaculture cooperatives. Morena, would you like to respond to that as we close?
Thank you. That one is quite a difficult one. You know, what kind of support, financial support or technical support? If it's a financial support, maybe then we can try guys like CEDA or CIFA or any government financial institutions. If you want technical support, then you can come to us, then we can assist you wherever we can help. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Samuel, and thank you, Morena. Both speakers, thank you very much for engaging us on such valuable information. We really appreciate it. And to our participants from organs of states, from private business, SMMEs, everyone who has just joined us, on behalf of my chairperson, Mr. Unati Sonti, and the executive of the Eastern Cape Maritime Business Chamber, we do appreciate your contribution, and we are hoping that, you know, baby steps, but change will begin to unfold. We really engage and appreciate your constant support on this, because we established these Maritime 101 sessions for exactly this type of engagement, to make sure that people are aware of what is happening around them, be it fisheries, any other sectors in maritime. We hope that you have gained something. We will make sure that the information is made available. Recordings are available on our Facebook page. Thank you so much. And I think we will have our last Maritime 101 session this year. We still have one more to go before the year end, and look forward to that. Make sure that you are tuned in onto our Facebook page for the information. It's quite very much important information. Also considering what our speakers has talked on, they did not only talk about the local issues, they talked about the global issues, the SDG, and they touched on the projects within the Operation Pakisa up to the local level into the Eastern Cape. So it's time to put all hands on deck. It's time to ensure that we create an enabling environment. It should not be skewed. It should not only be Western Cape focused, but also we must put effort on the East Coast side of South Africa in making sure that we grow a fisheries and aquaculture socio-economic growth. Thank you so much, and have a good day further.
Thank you very much.